Welcome back to the Muse Capital podcast. In this series, we're talking about the future of how we care. We're thrilled to welcome Lauren Mackler, one of the phenomenal founders of Cofertility. Cofertility is a human-first fertility ecosystem, rewriting the egg freezing and egg donation experience. Their Freeze by Co platform allows women to freeze their eggs for free when they donate half of the eggs to a family that otherwise can't conceive. For intended parents pursuing egg donation, their Family by Co platform serves as a more transparent, ethical egg donor matching platform. We're incredibly excited to be investors in a company that's reshaping fertility care and making the path to parenthood more positive, accessible, and empowering. Also, we have the debut appearance of a very special guest on the start of this episode, baby Luca's first official Muse Capital appearance.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
We're doing things a little bit differently today. We've got little Luca with us.
How perfectly appropriate for the topic today.
It's his debut Muse Capital podcast appearance.
Well, at the other podcast, I had my cat on my lap. So I figured, you know what? If I can have the cat on the lap, I can have the baby. And it is Cofertility. I am on maternity leave technically. So, you know, this is happening. Let's hope he lets us talk.
You will.
Let's get straight into it. Want to kick it off for us, Rach?
I can. I'm sorry, we were just joking earlier about what it is to be full-time working mothers. The three of us actually now. I have two, and you have two.
Yep.
And you have the one.
One tiny one.
And
Elizabeth, our partner, has two.
Yeah,
we were just talking.
The thing gets it. It's crazy.
It's a time. It really, and I think like building a family building company, it's a special kind of reality, right? It's like, we're doing it, right? And these little kids inspired the whole thing. And so they're going to show up. And, you know, I literally made an offer to a candidate yesterday while breastfeeding. And she was like, okay, yes, I'm here for this. This is the type of company I want to work. And I was like, this is the reality. So, you know, buckle up.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And it's a real testament also of why you're building what you're building and how you're building it. So yeah, kick us off, Rach.
Maybe you can just give us a little background on what you've been building with Cofertility. Let's just start there.
Yeah. So at Cofertility, we give women the opportunity to freeze their eggs for free when they donate half of the eggs retrieved to intended parents that can't otherwise conceive. So that could be someone who's struggling with fertility challenges, same-sex male couples, cancer survivors, and more. We essentially are like creating access to egg freezing by making it free while making egg donation less transactional and more ethical at the same time. So we're solving problems on both sides. And it's been so exciting to see it out in the world and to have it work, right? Like babies are being born, and our members on the other side get to go live their life on their own timeline because they're not so worried about their biological clock in the way they were before.
How many members and what kind of success stories are you seeing? Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, just last week, we had our first Cofertility twins were born.
Wow.
And it's so exciting to track, you know, the pregnancies and, you know, these births. And it's wild to see that. But on the, we call them split members, the women who go through the egg freezing process and donate half. In just over 2 years, we've had over 100,000 women apply to that program. And that's on our, you know, limited seed stage budget, right? I think there's so much more to come as our business grows and we really start to activate marketing channels and things like that. And then on the intended parent side, you know, it is really just wild in that these intended parents are looking for a donor that reflects their own background, right? I think a lot of times you want someone who matches your heritage or your education or your interests even. And we've been really able to nail that because we're opening the pie of women that are interested in egg donation. And so they're more likely to find someone who reflects their own background when they come to Cofertility than when they look elsewhere.
I mean, this is pretty revolutionary just in terms of what you're doing. And so just very curious, how did you guys come up with the business model? Like, where was that aha moment?
Yeah.
Oh, this could actually work. And maybe talk us through kind of how it worked before.
Yeah.
And how you guys came up with the model.
So like the status quo or traditional egg donation is done with cash compensation. So a donor is recruited to participate where she's offered cash compensation to go through the process. Typically, we see that starting in around $10,000, and that goes up based on her background. So the harder it is to find a donor, the more cash compensation she can make. And so to me, and I spent almost 10 years at Uber before starting Cofertility, I always call it surge pricing for egg donors, right? Like that's essentially what they're doing because they're in such demand. And so you might find that someone with a particular background is getting, 70 or 80K in cash compensation, which is just crazy to me and really unfair to intended parents that have a harder to find background. So that's status quo. It really means that there is a lack of diversity amongst egg donors. And it's also done with a promise of anonymity, where these donors are going through the process maybe 5 or 6 times and they don't know where their eggs are going and their information is not shared with intended parents. And so it's all done under this guise of anonymity, which is impossible because 23andMe exists, right? Like no donation can truly be anonymous today, never mind 20 years from now when a baby grows up, right? And so it feels incredibly outdated and very overdue for someone to come and look at it through a new lens. And so that's really where, Halle Tecco, my amazing co-founder, who I know, I think you guys had her on a different episode.
She interviewed us. She interviewed us.
She's just the best. She's such a podcast like maven. It's the best. But
fellow Italian.
Oh yes. So she knew the concept of egg sharing was done in small pockets all over the world, actually, right? This idea where instead of cash compensation, the donor gets to keep half of the eggs retrieved. It's done at small clinics in the UK or, even in the US. I love it, Luca. Luca agrees, right? But what we realized was that no one was doing it at scale. No one was doing it in a way that really had enough scale to grow that pie of egg donors, which was essential to make this whole thing work. And so, Halle had been through her own fertility journey that made her want this experience to exist. And then I had my own health and fertility journey that really led us to wanting to dedicate our careers to this and to really put 100% of a team's effort behind growing this concept at scale.
It's incredible. When we first came to discover your company, we both had gone through our own IVF journeys. I was smack in the middle of it, and very proud to have little guy in my arms now after 7 years of hell. And it's just really incredible what you guys are building.
And I think the whole model, it just flips the script on accessibility, right?
Yes.
I'm kind of curious, maybe talk to that a little bit in terms of, how are women receiving what you guys are providing and what does that mean for the bigger market?
So from an accessibility standpoint, egg freezing is this amazing science that exists, and yet it is incredibly out of reach for most women, right? Like it is between $15,000 and $20,000 to freeze your eggs in the US, and that may or may not include storage. This is something that there has been more and more awareness over the last 10 years since this experimental label has been lifted on egg freezing. It's amazing when someone like Mindy Kaling or Jennifer Aniston is out here telling women, go freeze your eggs. However, those things stop short when it comes to accessibility, right? If most women can't do it, then it just doesn't even matter. And so we feel strongly that we needed to show up with a way that actually makes it something that's within reach for people. And so that's what our model does. Not only do they get to freeze their eggs for free, but they actually get storage for up to 10 years for free. So they really don't even have to think about it for that whole period of time. And so the hope is that by the time they would need to 10 years later, either use those eggs or need to pay for storage on their own, that they're in a better financial position 10 years later, right? And so we want to both create more access, but also, just continue on the awareness front so that more people know they have options to do it.
Speaking of awareness, I mean, now we've seen that fertility treatments are starting to get a lot more attention, even on a policy level. We're seeing the government now open up and sort of push access more across the United States. What impact do you think this will have on your business directly and on fertility treatments in general?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that it really does open things up, right? We've seen this executive order come down to say that, we want IVF to be covered. It was very short on detail, though, right? And I think that it's unclear who would pay for it, right? Is it tax dollars? Is it health insurance premiums? So truly, there was very little detail. And so that's one piece of it, is like, who's going to pay? And the other is like, who does it cover, right? I think Cofertility, we're following this very closely, but we really care about making sure any legislation that comes from it is making IVF more accessible to all families, right? Not just, the norm in terms of what our government decides should be a family. And so we want to make sure it's inclusive of everybody who wants to be a parent. And I think that's really key. So fingers crossed, it means something, but I don't want to say I'm holding my breath, but like, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Everyone is waiting for those details, right?
Yes.
It's like a big statement, but what's the actual, how is this going to actually work?
Right.
So little birdie tells me that by the time this podcast goes live, you'll have a major announcement for us. Can you give us a sneak peek for us, but for those that listen, what's going on?
We just closed our Series A. Yes, it's a huge milestone for us, and we're so excited, both with so many of our existing investors participating, but also some really amazing new investors on our team. And I think it's going to just help us further our conviction that this is like the way forward for egg donation and egg freezing, and help us scale our team to support the interest we're seeing from so many members.
I mean, congratulations. And I know how hard it has been to just build a company like this. Let's have a real talk, though, on how has that fundraising journey been, especially from the very first days. We know in our world, 95% of VC partners are men. This is when we first entered this space and we were raising capital around our thesis around women's healthcare. It was still pretty new and considered niche, which of course we know is the complete opposite of that. And so it's a huge feat that you've arrived to where you are today. But tell us a little bit about how your experience was in general with fundraising and capital in and around this topic.
And raising postpartum was like a whole new avenue for me, or with just with a newborn. But I think the biggest learning, and we had this with our seed round too, is like only spend time with investors who truly understand the problem you're trying to solve, right? Like if you have 30 minutes to get to know an investor, like don't spend that trying to convince someone how big of the market is for IVF, right? Like start with someone already gets it, or somebody who has experienced the pain point. That just went a really long way for us, right? It helped us to just get to it with investors about our business, as opposed to like why they should care about IVF or why they should care about third-party reproduction. And so that really helped. I think the coolest part about fundraising this time is that we had investors who came to the conversation who were like, we just got off a call with one of your intended parents, or we just got off a call with one of, Cofertility's egg donors. And like that, to have our members speak on our behalf without us even knowing that they were going to talk to them or which ones they were going to talk to, was like the coolest experience, and went such a long way, right? Like that made all the difference, that like they had an amazing experience with our team. They had a baby, or like they had this experience. Like what's better than that?
No, I think what you just said about raising capital, I mean, it's fascinating, right? We, even as investors that invest in things like women's health, like we have the same pain points on the fundraising journey. You're right. Like going to the investors who already know the market, that's tough. It's like, to Asia's point, if you have 95% of people that work in VC that are male, then, trying to find the ones that actually get it is really tough. It's the same for us on, as a female-led fund. And I do think it's getting better.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started our journey 8 years ago, nobody would give these amazing entrepreneurs money because they just couldn't. There wasn't enough people. And it was like when we met them, it's like we were finishing sentences for them, right? Because we understood the pain points personally and professionally. And so I think it's so important that we have more investors in the space. It's great that you found them, but man, it was really tough back then.
There aren't enough even now. Like I remember, Asia, our breakfast at Great White, when I
stalked you.
Yeah. No, but I remember leaving there and I called Halle on my way home and I was just like, oh, she gets it. Like she gets it. She gets it. She gets it. And there are people I spoke to for our A who like were interested, but I could tell they didn't get it, right? And so like, in that first conversation, and truly the ones who spoke to our members are the ones who got it really fast. And so, yeah, not everyone is like you, but I wish they were.
But it is getting better.
Yes.
It is getting better. And part of the reason it's getting better is seeing success in the market and seeing, the companies that we've invested in the past are now, as you are, raising Series A's and B's and getting real success in the market and people are talking about them. So you're doing a great service for women's healthcare in general and for the venture community investing in this space. And it's just really, really exciting to see you grow. And on that note, I want to talk about level the playing field. Yes, this is such an exciting campaign. Everyone out there knows I have a soft spot for everything that is sports related and women in sports. And I know Maria Sharapova is a very proud investor of Cofertility and a dear friend of ours. And I would love to hear a little bit more about the campaign, how it came about, why it's so important to you, and yeah, maybe also a little call to action on how somebody can get this little nifty hat, which I can't put over my.
So we partnered with an organization called And Mother. It's a nonprofit that does so much work advocating for people who are on some point of their motherhood journey. That could be before, during, after. It was started by Alicia Montano, who is like this famous Olympic runner who is famous for running 8 months pregnant. Long before I knew her, I could imagine that photo, that amazing iconic photo of her running pregnant. And her team does such amazing work. And I just knew that we needed to bring more attention to what they do and to bring attention around the very unique challenges that athletes face in thinking about growing their family, right? It impacts their earning potential. It impacts their long-term path as it relates to what they're able to accomplish. And so it's a really under-resourced group as it relates to family planning. And I think that really starts with research. And so I said to Alicia, I was like, let's partner together. Let's bring more awareness to this and let's get pen to paper on just how big of an issue this is. And so we worked with our medical advisors. We put together a survey for professional athletes, Olympic level athletes, and even, some college athletes about their feelings around family planning, fertility preservation, fertility services, the cost, the access, all of those big questions. We had hundreds of them reply very quickly. This was no shortage of people who wanted to participate in this study, which was really amazing. I think everyone, whenever you do something like that, you're like, ooh, will they care? Absolutely. This was something that everybody was like, I have so many opinions. How do I share more? And then we looked at the research and it was wild. 95% of professional female athletes that we talked to felt motherhood negatively impacted their earning potential. What? That's crazy. 92% of them received no financial or institutional support for fertility care. These numbers are things that need to change. And I think that starts with awareness around the problem. And so now we have data to put into a white paper to go and talk to different organizations and really get this out there and to people who can do something about it. And then we published it, right? So we published the data. If you go to leveltheplayingfield.co, it lives on the Cofertility website. And we had over 40 of these professional athletes come and share this data because of how much they care about it. And there's still more to come. And it's just the beginning, I think, of the work that we can do with this community that just is underserved as it relates to family planning, right? They're giving up so much of their future for the sport and for our enjoyment and entertainment, right? Like we should be able to support them in something they deeply want, which is becoming a mom someday.
It's super timely, and we need reports like this to really make it a stark explanation and clear message to teams and leagues harnessing the power and the growth of women's sports to really pay attention to this. And we're going to start to see some real change, and what you guys are putting together is a real catalyst for that. So thank you.
It was really fun to work on too. I think like we also realized in our own Cofertility community, we have professional athletes and former college athletes who have participated in our split program. And they are so excited about what Cofertility has meant to them and to their journey. And so they were the ones who were the most excited about this campaign. And that was just like the cherry on top for us.
And every journey is different. There was one basketball coach who came back to work 3 days after giving birth. Then you have Heather Mills, who's one of the athletes in SailGP's UK team, who came back on the water a few months into her pregnancy. There's others, a few months into her giving birth. You have moms taking a year, 2 years off. I mean, there's so many different ways of being mom. And if you're going to grow a business in and around women's sports, you have to accommodate to all those different realities.
Totally. I think, and this, the first time I met Maria and we talked about Cofertility, that's actually where like the name Level the Playing Field was inspired by, right? Because she was like, oh, well, egg freezing totally contributes to gender equality, right? Like men don't have to think about this. They don't have to think about what happens to their body on their, if they want to become a parent. Women do, right? And if we're able to help increase access and help support people on that part of their journey, like it just doesn't have to impact their day-to-day in the same way. So that's really where it came from.
It's just on that note, just as I come stepping outside of the athlete journey for a minute. It really does, IVF in general is such an empowering tool for women and women in careers as well, because I think about, I'm 45, and of course I would have, in theory, would have loved to have had a child younger, but because of IVF, I was able to eventually have my son and also build a career at the same time. And then you're seeing young women today in their 20s and 30s being able to freeze their eggs and have that as a security blanket for themselves while they build their careers, instead of having to have their clock ticking and having to interrupt a passionate sort of love of a career that they've started to build. And it's just it's not for everyone, but it's really part of allowing a woman to live a full life.
It totally can be, but I actually think about IVF as like a 3-legged stool, right? Like you have to have all three for it to work. And some people just like, it doesn't always work. But I think of the 3-legged stool as like financial is 1, psychological is 2, and physical is 3, right? All 3 of those have to work for you to be able to like have an effective, sustainable IVF journey. And, you have to be able to withstand the experience, body, mind, but also the cost. And if we don't do anything about the cost, it's just outlandishly expensive for most people, honestly. And so if we can work to support people on all 3 of those areas, then more people will get to the outcome that they want.
Yeah, I think it's a real passion of ours. I mean, like we said earlier, IVF has typically just been for those that can afford it, right? Which is a small part of the population. And we've always believed in technologies that allow for the democratization of care.
Yeah.
And absolutely, it's companies like yours that allow that to happen, right? To stop having that huge price tag and have, young women be able to have a viable, financially sound solution that will allow them to live the life that they want to. I think this trend is only becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, and more women, young women, want that insurance. And so I think we're super excited about what you guys are building.
And the other leg of the stool, the mental health, which is a real load. And I lived through it myself. We have companies like Mavita that we invested in that can really support that mental health. I mean, it didn't exist when I had first started my journey. I would have loved to have had that as well. The 3-pronged approach.
If you're a young woman or a woman that's wanting to embark on an egg freezing or donation journey, what's the one piece of advice that you would give, or what do you wish that they knew before embarking on that process?
Well, there was a study recently that said 3 in 5 Gen Z women are concerned about their fertility. And I think that's fascinating. I actually attribute that to millennials who have done a better job than generations before in talking about the challenges that we've faced, right? Whether that's with miscarriage or trouble getting pregnant, or an IVF journey, we document that. We share it on social media, and Gen Z is listening. They're paying attention and they're aware of it. And I don't want them to see that this isn't meant to be like fear mongering, right? But there is some reality to the fact that we spent or at least I did. I spent so much of my youth being afraid of trying not to get pregnant, right? Don't get pregnant, that by the time I got there, it was wait, how do you do this? What is ovulation? How do you actually get pregnant? And so I think this younger generation is much more aware of all of those challenges than we were. And so we're here for that. I think it's great, but I think that concern should come with education. So first and foremost, educate yourself, and your body has information it can tell you about where you stand, right? So that's any combination of hormone testing or, getting an ultrasound to know what is your antral follicle count? What sort of position is your fertility in? I have a friend who found out that she was in early menopause at age 26, right? That is something that had she not done some discovery work, she would not have known that until much later in life, when she was trying to have a baby. And so understand where you're at. And that's something you can do with Cofertility or even with your own, OBGYN, or start with your primary care. But first of all, know where you're at. The next is think through, what are your life ambitions, goals? How many children do you think you want to have? What sort of career path do you have, right? I think if someone is a med student who has several years ahead of them in education and training and things like that, they may say, you know what, I don't want to have my first child until I'm well into my 30s. Whereas someone who chose a different career path may say, oh, I am totally ready to have a baby by the time I'm 28. They may want to take a different path. And so being real with yourself about what is ahead of you from a career, and even do you have a partner yet that you want to have a baby with, right? That's another piece of your equation. And so we are all about options and knowing what's ahead of you, and there's zero judgment from us or anyone that you're going through this journey with, to ask those questions. I think the other thing that I like to flag is that not enough people know about secondary infertility. I think that, people just think, oh, I got pregnant. I stayed pregnant with my first, and I had no, any subsequent pregnancy after that will be no problem because I'm not someone who faced any amount of infertility. And that's not the reality, right? I faced secondary infertility. It was a lot harder for me to get and stay pregnant with my second child than it was the first. And probably because I aged in between, right? But people who maybe want to have 2 children or 3 children, or want to have a longer age gap between those kids, are people who really might benefit from egg freezing before that first child, or, embryo freezing, depending on your, situation. Doing that up front allows you to have more options for subsequent pregnancies later. And so knowing those paths, asking the right questions, and, just being informed. Like, don't bury your head in the sand about it. And taking advantage of what's in front of you, right? Egg donation might not be for everybody, and that's okay too. We have a program called Keep, where you get to keep all of the eggs for yourself if that feels like a better option for you. And, just look into your options.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. You said it better than us, but your point about the millennials doing a better job at educating younger women.
Yeah.
How awesome, right? It's
Yes.
like our generation, we went through all these struggles. Why? Because, like, first of all, we were not really that educated about it, right?
Oh.
And then the second thing was this was taboo. Like, we weren't allowed to talk about things like menopause or struggles with infertility. Like, this was not accepted. And so how wonderful that you've got, the older generation now, us included, that have gone through these pain points and can go now and educate young women to not go on that same path.
Educate them and build businesses around them and
Exactly.
solutions and invest in companies. And I mean, even our own hormone and understanding of our hormones. I mean, we didn't even know what as you said, we just sort of are told not to get pregnant. And so you do everything to shut that entire system down. And therefore you're not even educated. You don't even know how your cycle works. I mean, I only learned about how the cycle actually works in my late 30s, early 40s, really.
I think too, like, boomers and Gen X are educating millennials on menopause for the first time, right? Like, the moment is now. Like, we are talking about the uncomfortable, stigmatized things, and nothing will be left like as taboo really soon.
It is amazing. Actually, so one of our other companies I think you know about is MIDI.
Yes.
And it's so
I'm
funny
a fangirl.
because Joanna and the team, like, the reason they built the company is because they all went through horrific menopause symptoms. And they were like, hey, no, this is not okay, not acceptable. So we're going to go build the company that fixes this.
Yes.
And it's amazing that entrepreneurs like yourselves are all building so that the younger generation don't have to accept this.
I have goosebumps as you say it, because it's true. And it, like, gets me, some days are, as any entrepreneur, I think you have the high highs and the low lows. But when I think about it that way of like, no, I'm here for it because I really don't want other people to face the same things that we did.
That's something we share. We say, like, between us, we've gone through every women's health issue under the sun, and we're like, that does not need to happen.
No.
There's amazing entrepreneurs building technology solutions that can fix this. And so I think the timing is now, and hopefully it's great for the next generation. So
that's the plan. Has there been any pushback on what you're building? And I mean, I know the answer to that, and so it's facetious, but I know that a lot of that is based on lack of true understanding of what it is that you're trying to build. But what pushback have you been receiving? By whom? And what would you like to tell those people?
Yeah, I think that the pushback comes in two camps. I think there are some people who just, like, don't believe in egg donation, right? And those people who are out here being like, oh, why don't they just adopt? Or, like, that is a camp that I think we'll always have no matter what. And, they leave angry comments on social media, and it's...
but I'm sure they have no issues with sperm donation, but hey,
probably.
there we go.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry.
No, you're so right. So that has been something that, like, you just kind of have to ignore and deal with, and it is what it is. And
those people are anti-IVF in general. They're just,
but they have very loud voices. And so I think that that's something that, I want my team to, like, keep their head up and not worry about it, and just know that, like, we don't let that, we stay the course, and I think that that's something that is what it is, right? Like, that's their problem. I think we have received some pushback on, is there a world where the split program, or this idea of egg sharing, right, where someone gets to keep half of the eggs retrieved and has them stored for 10 years, when they donate half, could that be perceived as coercive? And I don't see why that could be any more coercive than paying a donor cash compensation. Like, how is paying them $80,000 not coercive? And so what I believe and what I think, we're all sort of aligned on is that these women are highly thoughtful and intelligent and capable and deserving of making decisions about their own body. And we support that on all levels. And so the people who go through our program are making a decision of sound mind and are, really informed about the implications of their donation. They go through a psychological screening. They are given many opportunities. They meet with a lawyer. They're, so many opportunities to decide if this is something they want to do. If they opt out before the donation and say, you know what, I changed my mind, great. Like, I would love for them to decide that early on the process, right? There is no twisting of arms. And if anyone ever felt that they didn't want to do it, we would help them find another way to freeze their eggs, right? That's what the KEEP program's for. And so I really believe that is just kind of a crazy criticism, but to each their own, right? Like, if this is for you, great, do it. If it's not for you, awesome, don't. That's how we see it.
It's a conscious decision, and you have to educate yourself. And those who judge the process typically don't know much about it. And that's true for surrogacy as well, and so many elements of this entire journey. But hopefully your team keeps their head high, especially when you have good news like twins and you see the happy families and the love exploding in families.
Oh, yeah. We had one of our donors sent so we had another baby that was born a couple weeks ago, and the donor asked us to mail the parents a onesie, and it said "good egg" on it. Isn't that the best?
That is the best.
I know.
And what a great way to end this incredible chat. Mm-hmm. Lauren, we love you. I will always be grateful for stalking you and forcing you to see me for breakfast those few years ago. How many years ago now?
I think that was 2021. Oh my God. No,
wait, it was before COVID.
No.
It was just after.
Yeah, just after.
It was?
Yeah.
God, I have the time.
It's like 3 years. I think it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, because I had a 6-month-old baby who is now 3.5 months. Or 3.5 years, yeah.
I mean, the sense of time has just gone out the window. Lauren,
thank you so much.
This was such a treat to start a Friday.
Yes, same. We're so excited, and congratulations on the news. And we couldn't be more excited for you and making women's lives better, families' lives better.
Onwards and upwards.
We love being part of what you guys do. So let's keep doing it.
Thanks so much for listening. To find out more about Cofertility, go to cofertility.com. As always, you can find out more about us at musecapital.vc. Special thanks to our executive producer, Lauren Mattick, and our engineer and composer, John Meek. Ciao for now.